Imagine having so much money that you could literally own a piece of the periodic table. In 1979, two brothers decided they didn't want to just be rich. They wanted to control the world's supply of silver. They nearly succeeded. They drove the price from $6 to $50 an ounce, making themselves the wealthiest men on Earth, at least on paper. But then, in a single day known as Silver Thursday, billions of dollars just evaporated. The global economy teetered on the very edge of a total collapse. But here's the mystery. Was this just a failed investment or a calculated attack on the US dollar? And where did all those missing billions actually go? Meet Nelson Bunker Hunt and William Herbert Hunt. They were the sons of an oil tycoon, already worth billions, but they had a paranoid streak. They truly believed the US dollar was going to become worthless due to out-of-control inflation. Their solution? Hard assets, specifically silver. Starting in the early 70s, they began buying, and I don't mean a few bars, we're talking thousands of tons. They were so committed that they reportedly hired a fleet of planes and armed guards just to fly their physical silver to secure vaults in Switzerland, fearing the US government might one day seize it. But here's the twist. They weren't just buying with their own money. They were using leverage, borrowing massive amounts of cash to buy even more silver. This is like taking out a mortgage on your house to buy another house, but on an astronomical scale. By 1980, through a combination of physical silver and futures contracts, they controlled roughly 1/3 of the entire world's private silver supply. They didn't just have a seat at the table. They were trying to buy the whole casino. As the Hunts cornered the market, the price of silver skyrocketed. This created a bizarre real-world ripple effect across the globe. People were literally ripping the silver out of their own mouths, selling old dental fillings for cash. Thefts of silverware and heirloom jewelry reached an all-time high as criminals realized the forks in Grandma's drawer were now worth a small fortune. Meanwhile, major companies were in a state of panic. Industrial giants like Kodak and Tiffany & Co. were watching their costs explode. They couldn't get enough affordable silver to make photographic film or their iconic jewelry. The world's silver supply was being held hostage. But behind the scenes, the big players at the COMEX, the commodity exchange where all this trading was happening, were getting extremely nervous. They realized that if the Hunts kept buying, the price would go so high that the exchange itself would go bankrupt trying to cover the trades. So, they did something incredibly controversial. They changed the rules right in the middle of the game. In early 1980, regulators introduced what became known as Silver Rule 7. It essentially prohibited anyone from buying more silver on the exchange. You could only sell your existing positions. For the Hunts, who had built their entire strategy on continuously buying more, this was a death sentence. The exit doors were sealed shut. On March 27, 1980, they now infamous as Silver Thursday, the bubble burst. With no new buyers allowed, panic selling began, and the price of silver plummeted. It fell over 50% in a single day. Because the Hunts had borrowed so much money to buy their silver, they were hit with margin calls from their brokers. Think of it like a bank calling and demanding you pay back your entire home loan immediately in cash. They owed billions, and they needed to pay it back right now. They couldn't. The Hunt brothers began a desperate fire sale of their assets, but the math just didn't add up. The hole was too deep. Major brokerage firms that had lent them the money were now minutes away from collapsing themselves. If they went down, it would trigger a domino effect, a financial contagion that could have caused a second Great Depression. And then, something strange happened. Just as the global economy stared into the abyss, a $1.1 billion bailout loan was suddenly organized by a consortium of banks, saving the system from total meltdown. But why? Why would the very banks that were almost destroyed by the Hunts' scheme turn around and save them? Some theorists suggest the Hunts weren't acting alone. Rumors have persisted for decades that they were actually fronting for powerful interests in the Middle East who were looking to destabilize Western currency as a form of economic warfare. In the end, the Hunts lost everything. They went from being the richest men in the world to filing for one of the largest personal bankruptcies in U.S. history. They were fined, sued, and publicly disgraced. But here is where the story gets really cold. Despite all the liquidations and bankruptcies, billions of dollars in paper wealth simply vanished. It didn't just disappear. It was transferred into the accounts of the very banks and financial institutions that had issued the bailout and forced the sell-off. To this day, financial historians and investigators argue over the truth. Were the Hunt brothers simply greedy market manipulators who got what they deserved? Or were they the victims of a rigged system? A system designed by the financial elite to protect themselves by changing the rules and crushing anyone who dared to challenge their power. They tried to own the moon, and they fell into a black hole. Was it greed, or was it a setup? You decide. So, here's a question for you. If you had billions of dollars, would you try to corner a market, or would you stay under the radar? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives into the shadows of high finance and stories like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.